headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Let's cross to somebody who will give us the Liberal Democrat perspective. Always delighted to have her on the show. Christine Jardine, welcome back to Talk.
Hello, it's nice to be back.
Were you there?
Oh, yes. I sat through the vast majority of it and got to ask the Prime Minister a question. And it was, at times, it was uncomfortable, to be absolutely honest, because it was clear that the Prime Minister was struggling. And you have to say the credibility of the government is now being called into question, the credibility. He's undermining, as several people said today, there's a danger of undermining the our democracy completely, because if you can't trust the government, you can't trust the Prime Minister, can you trust the democracy?
It's quite interesting you're there. You know, it's different when you watch it on television. So the view would be, just from this studio, that the report is watered down, that he knows full well that he's got a few months now before the Met Police report is given. Mm-hmm. The question to most of the listeners here and from them is, does that give him time to then implement Tory policies that he was voted in office to implement and hasn't, because he's gone down different agendas and different alleyways? Again, just in terms, Christine, of our views, yes, lots of boring questions which he dead batted back, but nobody seemingly able to land, you can say wobble, but he's not going anywhere, is he? He's not going anywhere at all. He's not.
The thing I thought was a contradiction was that continually we had the Conservatives saying, this Prime Minister's got to be allowed to focus on the things that he was elected to do. But the reason he's not been allowed to focus on what he was elected to do is because of the behaviour of those in Number 10. So my own view is, after listening to that the only way that this government is ever going to be able to do what the country needs it to do and focus on the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, the problems in Ukraine, is if the Prime Minister goes. But you've been in politics long enough, Christine, to know that the next sentence from me is true, and not all of what I say is factually right. I accept that. I'm not. I'm just I have an opinion. But you know as well as I do that not only has the Met Police bought him time to do what he wants, that the Tory backbenchers don't really care any more about the country than that they care about their own seats, right? And the truth of the matter is that Boris Johnson is still somebody, and this is if I was an opposition MP, this would stick in my craw, right? Because I promise you, and certainly probably strangely, the northern callers far more than the southern callers, I promise you, Christian, I wouldn't like it all saying the same thing. We're done with Partygate, so he's flawed, so he's made mistakes. He's still the best. But that's what they're saying. And they are saying, and this is interesting, right? He stood up and he goes, yeah, there were problems in Number 10. I'm changing that. He's gone, she's gone. That's been changed. We've got a better operation. I've made mistakes, but I'm your Prime Minister. However much 600 and however many people want him out, that will probably do for the electorate, don't you think? Well, that's not what happened. That's not what we were hearing in Cheshire and Amersham. That's not what we were hearing in North Shropshire after Partygate began. Mm-hmm. It's not what the latest YouGov polls say.
But they clawed back 3 points over the weekend, didn't they?
There is a feeling out there amongst people, and I get it every day from constituents, that, Boris's time has passed and that it's time for somebody else. And you're saying he's bought time, but he's only bought time if he can put this to bed, and he can't. He can't put this to bed because he can't answer questions. And they're continually going to come back and say, if he keeps saying, wait for the full report, wait for the Metropolitan Police, that just drags it out. And that just makes it more difficult. If I were a Conservative MP tonight, I would be thinking, even if I was thinking about my own seat rather than the country, I would be thinking the time has come when Boris has to go to allow us to move on. It's like football managers. There was nobody wanted, or very few people probably wanted Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to succeed at Man United more than I did. But he lost the dressing room. And there comes a point where you have to go.
Sorry, you're a Man United fan. Where did that come from? Where did that come from?
Oh, I thought you knew me better than that, Jeremy. I've always been a Man United fan.
Right, you know me. I put it to people straight. I'm not out to offend. You can answer, Ian in Leeds. A Liberal Democrat talking about democracy. You fought the last election against the will of the British people. How does Christine Jardine answer that? There you are. Ian in Leeds.
We didn't fight against the will of the British people. We fought for the British people to have the final say. There's a world of a difference. It was presented by a lot of people as us fighting against the will of the British people.
But you were going to overturn the referendum, weren't you?
We fought for people to have... I fought for people to have the final say on that. And I think that in a democracy, you need to give people the final say on any deal, as big as that one was. But we have moved on from there. The country voted, and the country voted for the Conservatives. And the problem that we have now is that government is not delivering, and it's not delivering because of the behaviour in number 10.
Yeah.
That government is not.
But Christine, when you say number 10, to me, if I was Boris Johnson or I was in Boris Johnson's camp, I would be using that, and that's what my tactic would be. I would say, and I quote, absolutely, I've allowed it to be run by people who patently aren't up to the standards that are needed. I'd be turning fire on Dominic Cummings. I'd be saying, do you know why I got rid of him? Because he put all this together, the horrible little whatever. I'd be saying, if I was Boris Johnson, I'm going to sort this out. You keep saying number 10, that's what Boris Johnson's going to say.
The leader sets the tone.
Yeah, I get that.
Boris Johnson set the tone. He set the culture in number 10.
Yeah.
And like Harry Truman used to say, and he had a thing in his desk that said that the buck stops here, the buck stops with Boris Johnson. You're Prime Minister, you have responsibility for the country, and you have responsibility for the people that you appoint.
Yeah.
You appoint those people, and you have responsibility for the way that they behave, because they take their lead from you.
Daniel Granger, before you go, Christine, really appreciate you being on. He says, why has no one questioned that Boris didn't adhere to the lockdown rules because he didn't think the rules were needed? I don't think severe lockdown was required, as do many others, but this has been completely overlooked. What would you say to that, Christine?
Well, the thing is, Boris Johnson is the one who imposed the lockdown rules on everybody else. So, you can't impose the rules on everybody else and then say, oh, but I don't think they're needed, so I'm not going to apply by them. That doesn't work. He took the decision, he imposed the rules, and you and I and everybody else, and so many people, millions of people, whether or not they thought they were necessary, abided by them. And that brought people lots of suffering. People couldn't say goodbye to relatives who were dying that they would never see again. People missed their family. It had an enormous mental health impact on millions of people. But those were the rules that Boris Johnson said. And as Theresa May said, was it that he didn't understand them, or that he thought he didn't have to abide by them?
But that can be excused as the rantings of a rather bitter and twisted ex-Prime Minister.
You spoke for a lot of people.
Yeah, listen, Christine Jardine, I've obviously ascertained during this call that you've got a sense of humour because you're a Manchester United fan, so I'm going to tell you my joke of the day. Did you know that Dulux has introduced a new colour paint called Sue Grey because it covers up everything?
No.
Thank you, Christine Jardine.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.